The rain hammered against my rental car windshield as I pulled into the driveway of what used to feel like home. 3 weeks in Seattle dealing with maritime insurance claims had left me exhausted, and all I wanted was a hot shower and Helena's lasagna. Maybe we'd open that bottle of wine we'd been saving. I should have known something was wrong when I saw Rob Turner's beat-up Ford pickup parked where my spot usually was. Rob Turner, Helena's high school sweetheart, the one who got away before I came along and gave her a real life. The dock worker who still lived like he was 18, bouncing between construction jobs and unemployment checks. Helena always insisted they were just friends whenever his name came up at gallery events or neighborhood barbecues. But there was his truck, sitting in my driveway like it belonged there. I grabbed my suitcase and briefcase, juggling my keys as I approached the front door. The porch light was off, which was odd since Helena always left it on when I traveled. I fumbled with the lock in the darkness, trying to slide my key into the lock bolt. It wouldn't go in. I tried again, thinking maybe I had the wrong key. But no, this was definitely my house key, the same one I'd used for 8 years. I tried the door handle, locked tight. That's when I noticed the brass looked different, newer, shinier. My stomach dropped as the realization hit me. I pulled out my phone and called Helena. "What?" Her voice was sharp, annoyed. "Helena, it's me. I'm home, but my key doesn't work." There was a pause. Then I heard Rob's voice in the background saying something I couldn't make out, followed by Helena's laugh. That cruel laugh she reserved for people she considered beneath her. "We changed the locks, Gavin." Her tone was ice cold, matter of fact. "Don't bother me and Rob again." The line went silent. I stood there in the rain, water dripping from my hair onto my phone screen, trying to process what had just happened. My wife of 12 years had just locked me out of my own house. The house I'd bought before we even met. The house where my daughter Jenna had taken her first steps. Through the living room window I could see them. Helena was curled up on my leather couch, the one I'd saved 6 months to buy, wearing the silk robe I'd brought her from Tokyo last year. Rob was in my recliner, his dirty work boots propped up on my coffee table, drinking what looked like my good scotch. They were laughing. I could have pounded on the door, could have demanded entry, could have called the police right then and there. But I'm a maritime lawyer. I deal with sharks in expensive suits every day. I know that the first move in any legal battle is never the most obvious one. Instead, I got back in my rental car, drove to the Marriott downtown, and checked into a suite. Then I called Derek Chalmers, my senior partner. "Gavin, it's almost midnight. This better be good. Derek, I need you to pull the trust documents for my house, the Elm Street property." "At midnight? What's going on?" "My wife just locked me out of my own home. She's in there with another man, and I have a feeling she thinks she's smarter than she actually is." Derek's voice sharpened. He'd been practicing law for 30 years and could sense an opportunity from a mile away. "What do you need?" "Everything. Trust documents, property records, security footage from the cameras I installed last year. And Derek, I want this handled fast and by the book. No corners cut, no gray areas. When we move, I want it to be absolutely devastating." "You got it. I'll have everything ready by morning." I hung up and poured myself a scotch from the hotel minibar. Through my suite window, I could see the harbor where I'd spent countless hours as a kid, dreaming of bigger things. Where I'd proposed to Helena 10 years ago, thinking I'd found my partner for life. Funny how life has a way of teaching you that the people you trust most are often the ones sharpening the knife for your back. But Helena had made one crucial mistake. She assumed that because I traveled for work, because I trusted her, because I'd been the devoted husband for over a decade, I was weak. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next morning, Derek's office looked like a war room. Documents were spread across his massive oak conference table, and his paralegal Jennifer was typing furiously on her laptop. "Tell me you have good news," I said, setting down coffee for the team. Derek grinned, the predatory smile that made opposing counsel break out in cold sweats. "Oh, Gavin, do I ever have good news?" He slid a thick folder across the table. First, the house. It's held in the Sterling Family Trust, established in 2015 when you inherited money from your grandfather. Helena's name appears nowhere on the trust documents. She has no legal claim to the property whatsoever. I felt the first spark of satisfaction. What about occupancy rights? None. She's not a beneficiary, not a trustee, and the trust explicitly states that only you have the authority to grant residence to non-beneficiaries. By changing the locks and excluding you, she's committed unlawful detainer. Jennifer looked up from her laptop. It gets better. I pulled the security footage from your home system. The cameras you installed last year after those break-ins in the neighborhood. They've been recording everything. She turned her laptop screen toward me. The footage was crystal clear. Helena and Rob systematically going through my study, removing items from my safe, my watch collection, even my grandfather's war medals. "When was this taken?" I asked. "2 days ago, while you were in Seattle. And look at this." She clicked to another file. "They took everything to Prestige Pawn on 5th Street. I called pretending to be interested in a vintage Rolex. The owner confirmed he bought several expensive watches from a woman matching Helena's description." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Gavin, they've handed us grand larceny on a silver platter. The value of your watch collection alone puts this in felony territory." "What's our next move?" "Emergency injunction for unlawful detainer. I'll have the papers filed within the hour. Sheriff's Department will serve the eviction notice this afternoon." "And the theft charges?" "That's up to you. We have enough evidence to bury them both. The question is, how badly do you want to hurt them?" I thought about Helena's laugh on the phone, about Rob's boots on my coffee table, about 12 years of marriage thrown away like garbage. "I want them to understand that actions have consequences." Derek's grin widened. "Then let's give them an education they'll never forget." By noon, everything was in motion. The legal machinery I'd spent 15 years learning to operate was now focused on a single target: getting my life back. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter Jenna, away at college. "Dad, Mom posted some weird stuff on Instagram. Are you guys okay?" I pulled up Helena's Instagram account. My pressure spiked. She'd posted a photo of herself and Rob on my couch with the caption, "Finally free to be happy. Sometimes you have to remove toxic people from your life to make room for real love. New beginnings. Authentic life. No regrets." The comments were brutal. "You go, girl. Life's too short. Rob's so much hotter than that boring lawyer anyway. About time you dumped that workaholic." But there were others too. "This is pretty harsh, Helena. Gavin's a good guy. Airing your dirty laundry on social media is tacky. Your husband works his ass off for you, and this is how you repay him?" I screenshotted everything. In divorce proceedings, social media posts were admissible evidence. Helena was building my case for me, one vindictive post at a time. Derek called at 2 p.m. "It's done. Sheriff's Department will serve the papers at 4 p.m. sharp. I've also filed theft charges with the DA's office. They're very interested in prosecuting, especially given the value of the stolen items." What should I expect? "They'll have 30 minutes to gather essential personal items and vacate the premises. The sheriff will supervise to ensure nothing else goes missing. After that, the house is yours again." I checked my watch. 2 hours. For the first time in 3 days, I smiled. At exactly 4:15 p.m., my phone rang. "Gavin!" Helena's voice was shrill, panicked. "There are police at the door. They're saying we have to leave." "I know." "What do you mean you know? What did you do?" "I enforced my property rights. You changed the locks on my house, Helena. My house, the one that's held in a trust with your name nowhere on it." "That's impossible. I live here. I have rights." "Actually, you don't. Check the trust documents the lawyer is showing you." "I'll wait." I could hear muffled conversation in the background, Rob's voice getting increasingly agitated, and then Helena came back on the line. "This is insane. You can't just throw us out." "I'm not throwing you out. The law is. You committed unlawful detainer when you changed those locks. Oh, and Helena? You might want to call a criminal defense attorney. The DA is very interested in discussing your recent visits to Prestige Pawn." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. "My what?" "My watch collection. My grandfather's medals. The contents of my safe. Ring any bells?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "How did you—" "Security cameras, Helena. HD video of you and Rob cleaning out my study. Time stamped, date stamped, completely admissible in court. Did you really think I'd leave a house full of valuables unprotected?" "Gavin, please, we can work this out. I made a mistake." "No, Helena, you made a choice. Several choices, actually. You chose to betray our marriage. You chose to steal from me. You chose to humiliate me on social media, and you chose to underestimate me. You never meant to get caught. There's a difference." Rob's voice exploded in the background. "This is bullshit. You can't do this to us." I heard Helena trying to calm him down, but he was having none of it. "Tell your boyfriend that assaulting a police officer is a felony," I said calmly. Though at this point, I'm not sure how much worse his situation could get. "What do you mean?" "Helena, you're both looking at grand larceny charges. That's 3 to 7 years in state prison. Your little love nest is about to become a very different kind of accommodation." The sound of crying came through the phone. Not Helena's controlled sobs, but raw, ugly weeping. "Please, Gavin, I'm begging you, don't do this." For just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. This was the woman I'd loved, the mother of my child, my partner for over a decade. Then I remembered her laugh when she hung up on me in the rain. "You should have thought about consequences before you acted, Helena. The sheriff will supervise while you pack essentials. Everything else stays until the court determines what belongs to whom. Where are we supposed to go?" "I honestly don't care." I hung up. 20 minutes later, Derek called with an update. "They're out. Rob tried to get confrontational with the deputies, but they handled it professionally. Helena was crying, begging for more time, but the law is the law." "Any problems?" "She tried to take some expensive artwork from the living room. The sheriff reminded her that removing anything beyond clothing and toiletries would constitute additional theft charges. She backed down pretty quickly after that." "What about the stolen items?" "Detectives will interview them both tomorrow morning. The pawn shop owner is cooperating fully. Apparently he suspected the items might be stolen when they couldn't provide proof of ownership." I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized was there. "Derek, I can't thank you enough." "Don't thank me yet. This is just round one. She'll lawyer up, probably file countersuits, claim emotional distress, try to paint you as the villain. Are you prepared for that fight?" I thought about Helena's Instagram post, about Rob's feet on my coffee table, about 12 years of being taken for granted. Let her try. I've got the law, the evidence, and the truth on my side. What does she have? A very expensive legal bill and a boyfriend with a criminal record. Then I like our chances. The house felt different when I walked back into it that evening. Cleaner somehow, like an infection had been removed. Helena had left her mark, of course. Dirty dishes in the sink, her makeup scattered across my bathroom counter, clothes thrown carelessly over furniture. But it was my space again. I poured myself a proper scotch, not the hotel minibar swill, and surveyed the damage to my study. The safe was still open, empty except for some old tax documents they hadn't bothered with. My grandfather's desk had been rifled through, papers scattered everywhere, but they'd missed something important. Hidden behind a false back in the desk's bottom drawer was a second set of documents. Detailed financial records showing exactly how much money I'd poured into Helena's failing gallery over the years. Nearly $200,000 in loans that were never repaid, credit lines I'd guaranteed, business expenses I'd covered. Helena had always been terrible with money, treating my income like an endless resource. The gallery barely broke even in its best months, usually operating at a significant loss. I'd enabled it because I loved her, because I wanted her to be happy, because I thought supporting your spouse's dreams was what marriage meant. Now those records would be crucial in divorce proceedings. Every dollar I could claw back was a dollar she couldn't use to fund her new life with Rob. My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "Dad, what's going on? Mom called crying, saying you threw her out and she might go to jail." I sighed. This was the conversation I'd been dreading. I called her back. "Dad, Mom says you've lost your mind." "Jenna, I need you to listen carefully. Your mother and I are getting divorced. She's been having an affair, and she stole some valuable items from the house. I had to take legal action to protect myself." "She said you planted evidence and bribed the police." "Honey, I'm a lawyer. I don't need to plant evidence or bribe anyone. The security cameras I installed last year recorded everything. Your mother and Rob took my watch collection and sold it to a pawn shop." Silence. "Jenna, the cameras in your study? I thought those were just for burglars." "They were. I never imagined I'd need protection from my own wife." "This is so messed up, Dad. Why couldn't you guys just work it out?" "Because your mother chose to end our marriage the moment she started sleeping with Rob. Everything that's happened since then has just been dealing with the consequences of that choice. She says she loves him." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because I still loved Helena. That had faded the moment she laughed at me through the phone, but because of how casually my daughter delivered them. "Maybe she does, Jenna. But love doesn't excuse theft. It doesn't excuse betrayal. And it doesn't excuse destroying a family." "Are you going to send her to prison?" I looked around my reclaimed house, at the mess Helena had left behind, at the empty safe where my most precious possessions used to be. "That's up to the district attorney now. I've given them the evidence. They'll decide whether to prosecute." "Dad, please, she's my mom. And she'll always be your mom no matter what happens, but she's not my wife anymore. She made that choice for both of us." After I hung up, I sat in my leather chair, the one Rob had been lounging in just hours earlier, and tried to process the wreckage of my life. 12 years of marriage, gone. My daughter angry and confused. My wife facing criminal charges. My comfortable, predictable existence blown apart. But for the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells. Wasn't wondering what mood Helena would be in when I got home. Wasn't making excuses for her spending or her attitude or her increasingly obvious dissatisfaction with our life together. I was free. The realization should have felt better than it did. The next few weeks unfolded like a perfectly choreographed legal ballet. Helena hired Marcus Weinstein, one of the city's most expensive divorce attorneys, presumably on credit, since I'd frozen all the joint accounts pending court orders. Weinstein was good. I had to give him that. He immediately filed for emergency spousal support, claiming Helena was destitute and homeless due to my vindictive and disproportionate response to marital difficulties. Derek laughed when he read the filing. "Marital difficulties? Is that what we're calling grand larceny now?" "What's our response?" "Simple. We document every dollar you spent supporting her gallery, every credit line you guaranteed, every business loss you covered. Then we show the court that she repaid your generosity by stealing from you." The criminal case was moving forward in parallel. Rob had been arrested trying to pawn my grandfather's Purple Heart. Apparently he hadn't learned his lesson about stolen goods. Helena was cooperating with prosecutors, claiming she'd been coerced by Rob into taking the items. It was a smart strategy, actually. Paint herself as the victim of an abusive relationship, manipulated into criminal behavior by her controlling boyfriend. If the jury bought it, she might avoid prison time, but it meant throwing Rob under the bus completely. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Helena's Instagram account had gone dark after the arrest, but the damage was already done. Screenshots of her authentic life posts were circulating among our social circle, generating the kind of gossip that would follow her for years. My phone rang constantly, friends, colleagues, neighbors, all wanting to know what really happened. I gave everyone the same response. The courts will sort it out. But privately, I was documenting everything. Every conversation, every threat, every attempt at manipulation. Helena's team was building a narrative of the wronged wife driven to desperate measures by a cold, controlling husband. I was building a case file that would destroy that narrative completely. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mila Rodriguez, Helena's gallery assistant, called me on a Thursday evening. "Mr. Sterling, I think there's something you should know about Helena and Rob." We met at a coffee shop downtown. Mila was nervous, constantly looking over her shoulder. "I feel terrible about this, but I can't stay quiet anymore. Helena's been planning this for months." "Planning what?" "The affair, kicking you out, taking your stuff. She thought, because you traveled so much, you'd never find out about Rob, and when you did, she figured you'd just accept it and give her whatever she wanted in the divorce." "How do you know this?" Mila pulled out her phone. "She talked about it constantly at the gallery. I started recording our conversations after she asked me to help her move some of your belongings while you were out of town." She played a recording. Helena's voice was clear. "Gavin's so predictable. He'll bluster and threaten, but he won't actually do anything. He's too worried about his reputation, his precious career. I'll get the house, half his assets, and alimony. Rob and I will be set for life." Another recording. "The best part is, he has no idea I've been moving money around. The gallery account, the joint savings, I've been preparing for this for months. By the time he figures out what's happening, it'll be too late." I felt my jaw clench. "She's been stealing from me for months?" "Not just stealing, planning. She had Rob scope out your study, figure out what was most valuable. They were going to take everything gradually, make it look like you'd lost things or forgotten where you put them." "Why are you telling me this?" Mila looked genuinely distressed. "Because it's wrong. You've always been nice to me, respectful. And Helena, she's not the person I thought she was. She laughs about hurting you. She thinks you're weak." I thanked Mila and immediately called Derek. The recordings would be admissible evidence. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. Helena wasn't just a cheating wife who made a mistake. She was a calculating predator who had been systematically robbing and manipulating me for months. The gloves were officially off. Helena's criminal trial was set for 6 weeks out, but the divorce proceedings were moving faster. Weinstein had filed for an emergency hearing, claiming his client was being denied basic necessities while I lived in luxury. The hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom. Morrison was known for her no-nonsense approach and her particular distaste for litigants who wasted her time. Helena looked terrible. She'd lost weight, her usually perfect hair was limp and unwashed, and she was wearing a cheap department store dress instead of her usual designer outfits. It was clearly calculated to generate sympathy, but the effect was undermined by the Cartier watch she'd forgotten to remove, one of the few expensive pieces she'd managed to keep. Weinstein stood to address the court. "Your Honor, my client has been rendered homeless and destitute by her husband's vindictive overreaction to normal marital problems. She's sleeping on friends' couches, unable to access funds for basic necessities, while Mr. Sterling lives comfortably in their marital home." Judge Morrison looked unimpressed. "Counselor, I've reviewed the case file. Your client changed the locks on a house she doesn't own and stole valuable property from her husband. That's not a normal marital problem. Your Honor, Mrs. Sterling was acting under extreme emotional distress. Mr. Chalmers, your response?" Derek stood smoothly. "Your Honor, the defendant's emotional state doesn't excuse criminal behavior. We have video evidence of systematic theft, recorded conversations showing premeditation, and financial records documenting months of unauthorized transfers from joint accounts." He handed the court clerk a thick folder. "We're also filing counterclaims for conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." Helena leaned over to whisper frantically to Weinstein, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable as he flipped through our evidence. Your Honor, Weinstein tried again, even if some mistakes were made, my client shouldn't be punished with homelessness. Mr. Weinstein, Judge Morrison interrupted, your client made her housing situation my problem when she illegally evicted her husband from his own home. She can find alternate accommodations while this matter proceeds through the courts. But, Your Honor, motion denied. Mr. Chalmers, I'm granting your request for exclusive occupancy of the marital residence pending resolution of these proceedings. Mrs. Sterling, you have 24 hours to retrieve any remaining personal items under sheriff supervision. Helena's composure finally cracked. She stood up, tears streaming down her face. This isn't fair. He's destroying my life. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. Mrs. Sterling, you will sit down and remain quiet, or you will be held in contempt. Your current situation is the direct result of your own choices. But I have nowhere to go. That's not this court's concern. Bailiff, please escort Mrs. Sterling from my courtroom. As Helena was led away, still sobbing and protesting, Weinstein gathered his papers with the defeated air of a lawyer who knew he was fighting a losing battle. Derek and I walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine. That went well, Derek said. Better than well. Morrison's clearly on our side. Don't get cocky. Weinstein's good at playing the victim card. He'll appeal, file for reconsideration, drag this out as long as possible. Let him try. Every day this continues, Helena looks worse and our case gets stronger. But I was wrong about one thing. Helena wasn't done fighting, she was just getting started. 3 days after the hearing, I came home to find my front door standing wide open. I called 911 immediately, then Derek. The police arrived within minutes, followed closely by my attorney. The house had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, papers scattered everywhere. But this wasn't a random break-in. Whoever did this was looking for something specific. Detective Sarah Chen, who was handling Helena's criminal case, surveyed the damage with a grim expression. Any idea what they might have been after? Financial records, maybe? Legal documents? I keep most of the important stuff in a safety deposit box now, but they wouldn't know that. Derek was examining my home security system. Gavin, they disabled the cameras, cut the cables from outside. This was planned. Detective Chen nodded. Professional job. They knew exactly what they were doing. You think, Helena, I think your wife is getting desperate. Her criminal trial starts next week. The divorce is going badly, and she's running out of options. We found the real message in my bedroom, spray painted across the wall in red letters. You destroyed my life. Well, Derek said dryly, at least we know who our prime suspect is. But proving it would be another matter. Helena had an alibi. She'd been at Weinstein's office during the break-in with multiple witnesses. Rob was in jail awaiting trial. If Helena was behind this, she'd hired someone else to do her dirty work. The investigation continued for weeks without results. Whoever Helena had hired was good. No fingerprints, no DNA, no witnesses, just a clear message that she wasn't going to go quietly. But Helena had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how thoroughly I'd documented our financial relationship. The safety deposit box Derek mentioned contained more than just legal documents. It held copies of every check I'd written to support her gallery, every credit card statement showing business expenses I'd covered, every loan document I'd signed as guarantor. More importantly, it contained the original trust documents for my grandfather's estate, not just the house, but a substantial investment portfolio that Helena didn't even know existed. When Weinstein finally got around to demanding full financial disclosure, Derek was ready. Your Honor, my client's total assets are substantially higher than previously disclosed. However, all of these assets are held in trust, with Mr. Sterling as the sole beneficiary. Mrs. Sterling has no claim to any portion of these funds. Weinstein's face went white as he reviewed the documents. Helena had been counting on a substantial settlement to fund her new life. Instead, she was looking at walking away with virtually nothing. "This is impossible," Helena whispered, loud enough for the court to hear. "He hid money from me." Judge Morrison looked annoyed. "Mrs. Sterling, these are inherited assets held in trust prior to your marriage. Your husband had no obligation to disclose them during the marriage, and you have no claim to them in divorce." "But what am I supposed to live on?" "Perhaps you should have considered that before committing felony theft." Helena's criminal trial began the following Monday. Rob had already pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, but he'd refused to testify against Helena. Prison loyalty, I supposed. Without Rob's testimony, the prosecution's case rested entirely on the security footage and the recorded conversations Mila had provided. It was strong evidence, but Weinstein was skilled at creating reasonable doubt. He painted Helena as a victim of emotional abuse, driven to desperate measures by years of neglect and control. He argued that the recordings were taken out of context, that the theft was a cry for help rather than calculated greed. It was a compelling narrative, and I could see some jurors buying into it. But then the prosecution played Helena's Instagram posts. Seeing her mock our marriage on a big screen in open court, watching her celebrate my humiliation with her lover, hearing her laugh about being finally free, it destroyed any sympathy the jury might have had. The verdict came back in less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Helena collapsed when the judge sentenced her to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years probation and full restitution. As the bailiff led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Gavin," she said. "I'll make you pay for this." But it was over. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. Helena got nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, no assets of any kind. The prenup I'd insisted on before our marriage, which she'd signed without reading carefully, protected everything I'd brought into the relationship. She walked out of our marriage with exactly what she'd brought into it. Nothing. I'm sitting in my study, the same room where Helena and Rob once plotted to steal my life away, reading a letter from Jenna. She's doing well at college, though our relationship is still strained. She visits Helena in prison occasionally, which I don't discourage. Whatever else happened, Helena is still her mother. The house is quiet now, peaceful. I've had it professionally cleaned and redecorated, removing every trace of Helena's presence. It feels like home again. Rob got out of prison after 4 months and immediately left town. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he's working construction in Florida, telling anyone who'll listen that he was framed by a vindictive lawyer with too much money and influence. Helena has 8 more months on her sentence. Her lawyer has filed several appeals, all of which have been denied. She'll be out eventually, but she'll be starting over with nothing. No money, no reputation, no prospects. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. If I should have just accepted the divorce and moved on with my life. Then I remember her laugh on the phone that rainy night, her feet propped up on my furniture, her Instagram posts mocking our marriage. No. She made her choices, and I made mine. The difference is, I'm the one who understood the consequences. My phone buzzes with a text from Derek. "Drink tonight? Sarah Morrison is retiring and we're throwing her a party." I smile and text back, "Absolutely. I owe that woman a very expensive bottle of champagne." I close my laptop and head upstairs to change clothes. In the mirror, I see a man who looks older than he did a year ago, but strong.